I am going to consciously put on the calendar one day per month where the day is 100% yours, where you and I are just going to bond. I'm going to hear you. I'm going to listen attentively. We're going to be the best freaking friends we can be on that day. And that just enforces the friendship throughout every other day.
Welcome to Fatherhood Voices, breaking the toxic cycle. Dive in as real dads bear all, the mess ups, make ups, and every heartfelt moment in between. It's raw, it's real, and it might just change the way you see family.
Welcome to another episode of Fatherhood Voices. Now, I'm excited to have one of my spiritual brothers that has journeyed with plant medicine and was also part of a coaching program that I'm a part of. And excited for him to share his story of not only his upbringing, but how life is raising three boys. So I have three girls, he has three boys. So it's going to be interesting to see just a different perspective. And with that, Francisco, welcome.
Hey, thank you for having me, man. Thank you for having me. Very excited to be here.
I'm excited. So why don't you share with the audience just a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So my name is Francisco. I live in San Diego. Like you said, we met through a coaching program that we were mutually involved in. Through that coaching program, I was introduced to plant medicine. I've journeyed a couple times with that. And in that, there's actually been a lot of really valuable lessons involving, fatherhood and being a parent and being involved and things like that. I think that a lot of this, whenever you want to, if you choose to become aware, you start creating an awareness of where you made mistakes and where you could have done better. And I always say, man, in fact, my last ayahuasca ceremony, at the very end of it, it was very interesting to me that it had been very calm. I kind of slept through the whole thing. It was very, very mellow. But man, at the end, my three children showed up in front of me. And I just felt this overwhelming feeling of love. And the thought that came to me very clearly was that my three boys are my best teachers.
Wow.
Yeah. Frankly, I think that our children here are here to teach us way more than we can teach them.
Wow. So I'm excited that, prior to starting the podcast, you said that we can go deep and raw and just...
Yeah, I'm an open book, bro.
So I'm excited. I'm excited for that. So let's start off with, what did childhood look like for you? Tell me, were your parents intact? Or did you grow up in a household with mother and father?
Yeah.
And then how did your dad show up?
It's my parents are still together. I was very, very fortunate, completely blessed. Not only did I grow up with a healthy male figure and a healthy feminine figure as a mother and a father, but I also grew up with tremendous amount of love because both of my grandmothers lived with me all the way up till one of my grandmothers passed away when I was 16. But when I was 3, both of my grandparents passed away, my granddads. So they kind of just moved in with us. And my whole life, I grew up with mom, dad, and 2 grandmas, which was actually pretty cool. Now, one thing that as I've come into awareness and I've tried to work on myself and figure out who am I here to be. A lot of times I talk to a lot of people in these retreats, in these events that frankly, I realized how blessed I was to have so much love growing up. And it causes you to feel a certain kind of way in which, man, how could I relate or what can I possibly do to help others if I can't relate to those traumatic, really tough experiences? And it came to me actually in a plant ceremony where I realized very clearly that whenever I'm having a tough time in the ceremony, whenever I'm going through a process which is very tough or challenging, I immediately think of my mother's love. And my mother's love always helps me come out of the darkness. But then my father's strength and protection allows me to go deep again. So it's kind of this like really cool dynamic. And I realized that how I can show up to the world is by giving those 2 gifts that I was given so abundantly. I can offer other people love that was shown to me by my mother and strength and protection that was shown to me by my father.
Wow. So this is
So,
going to be beautiful because, a lot of guests that we have on have a lot of traumatic
hmm
experiences.
yep.
So now being able to shift the pendulum and talk about what are some things that your mom and dad, and particularly your dad, did to show you that love. And also, when did you realize how blessed you were? Because I'm sure growing up, you probably thought this was just every
I thought it
household.
was normal. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And now
Yep.
looking like you probably in retrospect, and especially when you go to retreats and so forth and see
Yeah.
how fucked up
Yeah.
families are.
Yeah.
Um, when did you come to that realization? And then also, what are some pivotal moments that you can look back on now as a child and go like,
Well, I think the biggest thing is, um, as I've grown up, as I've gotten older, I realized that even through all of that amazing love and everything, we all have our issues, right? My father grew up being a very macho Mexican. My mom, a very docile woman, and it works for them. But I realized that it might not be for everybody, that dynamic, right? I mean, my mom for years is like, "Oh, I'll put your socks on." Like that kind of service to my father. And my father is always like my way or the highway kind of guy. So there needs to be a little bit of a balance there, I think, a little bit more. However, for me personally, as a kid, my father showed up for me in a very particular way because he was always working. He was doing his thing. He was in business and things like that. And yet he always managed to be there for the important life lessons. One way or another, he always managed to be like, "Hey, I'm going on a business trip. You're not going to school for 2 weeks and you're coming with me." And
wow,
and he would just take me on a business trip with him. And I was 10 years old, 11 years old, and he'd have me just go with him to dinners with big business people, and he'd have me just sit there and listen. Or he'd be like, "Hey, there's a sales route that we're going to go on in Baja, and we're going to drive for 5 hours, and we're going to visit little mom and pop shops and try to sell these things." And he would take me with him when I was 12, 13 years old. He always got me very involved, and he always made me work. I mean, that's one thing that I think my dad was definitely tough love. He never went easy on me. He never in an aggressive physical way or even verbally, although he could be. He had the ability to do so if he really got to that point. But mostly he just had a way of telling me, "You got to work, you got to do shit, you got to get shit done." Since I was 7 years old, we got here to the United States, and he was like, "Hey, we got to go work the swap meets, and you can't stay home by yourself, so you're coming with us at 3 in the morning, and you're helping us set up the freaking thing, and you're helping us unload, and da 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 da." Child labor at its best. And then after that, he owned a factory, and I was 10, 11 years old, and I was driving a fucking forklift. And like literally driving a forklift on the weekends to help store things. And then he would go on sales routes, and then he bought another business where he did wholesale for hardware supply. And he'd buy literally truckloads of hammers. And my job after high school, I was 10, 11th grade, and I would get home and have to unload this entire truck of hammers to the warehouse to help out. That was my thing. Like it was, he made me work. I think that developed into something that is pretty cool. I feel like I don't know many people that can outwork me because of that, because it was just so heavily pounded into me. Was it healthy? I'm not 100% sure. I think so because it made me who I am, but that was his way of being there. And it was always with him, it was always the quotes, like little quotes that he would always just throw at me. In life, the only thing that matters are results. Trust is like life. You can only lose it once. These are things that just come to me really quick. Don't try to shit higher than your ass. Like, I don't know if I'm allowed to say that in this. Little things like that like he says, and nothing is true and nothing is a lie. It all depends on the perspective of the eye. Like all these little messages that he would always throw out there, and for some reason he had the ability of just really putting them in me. And it's good, and it also becomes a challenge because you always have this thing that you like. For me, it's all, even I'm 42, I still want to get the thumbs up from dad. I still want to get that, hey, good job. And he's still tough. He's like, why are you doing this? But it's pops. Yeah.
So what is one intimate memory you can think of as a child that you just felt his love?
Oh man, so many. There was quite a few, but I think that one particular, there's quite a bit of moments, but one particular moment is just him taking me out water skiing, for example. We would do it often. He bought a boat, and he loved being out on the ocean. And even though he was never an athletic guy and he was never into any water sports or anything like that, he would always take the time to take me out there and teach me and be like, hey, you got to do this. And every weekend, and it was just kind of our little thing where, but I think the biggest thing was him being, how can I say this? Pushing me to take risks. Like little moments like that my mom was like, no, no hagas eso, no, 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 te vas a matar. And my dad was like, déjalo en paz, brinca, like, and jump, like, get in there, It's like, no le va a pasar nada, brinca. And he taught me how to be fearless. And he's the most fearless human being I've ever met. Props to my dad, man. The guy is a tough, tough man. He was held up at gunpoint in a restaurant once for a robbery, and he literally fist fought his way through it. Just that kind of a man, So I think that's where I felt really moments of love, where he was just like, you got to do this, and he pushes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Let me ask you a question. I'm going to kind of
Yeah.
pivot a little bit now, because you said your dad's still a tough egg to crack.
Absolutely.
Any chance ever getting him to sit with plant medicine? Him and your mom?
Impossible.
Possible.
I would love to. I've talked to them about it. They are, him being the way he is and just very old school. And he dabbled in it as a young kid in the hippie years with mushrooms, but not in a ceremonial situation. It was always about partying and I just want to get laid type of deal, So it was a very different dynamic. So when I talk to him about it and I tell him my experiences or whatever, he just looks at me like, where is this coming from? Like, is it genuine? Is it But yeah, I don't think so. My mom would probably be a little bit more open to it just because it's coming from me, and my mom freaking adores me. It's just like, oh yeah, But they're very nervous about just the aspect. And I'll tell you what, it was just the way I was brought up, right? And the way we're all brought up. Years ago, I want to say maybe 10 years ago, my ex-wife, we were still together and everything, and she heard about what do you call the cactus from Sonora? The
peyote.
Peyote. She's like, maybe we should go to Mexico and do peyote and try it. I heard that it could be really good. And I was like, ¿estás loca? Like, estás bien pinche loca. No me voy a meter al desierto. I'm not going to go to the desert and freaking drink some cactus that makes you hallucinate. It's drugs, that's of the devil. But then I think the medicine finds us at the perfect point, right? And for me, it was just this point of desperation. I was really broken through some things, and I was like, man, I'll do whatever it takes to get myself out of this rut. And through friends and whatever, I met the right people, and they guided me towards it, and they said, hey, come with us. And I did. And I was sharing right before the podcast how I sat there for the first time, somebody that had never done any drugs or anything, and they gave me like this handful of shrooms. And I'm like, oh shit. But it was the most beautiful experience ever. It was literally one of the most beautiful things. I remember towards the end of that ceremony, and there was a lot of lessons in that ceremony. Felt a lot of pain, felt a lot of strength. Just things came out. But towards the end of it, I walked into the bathroom. I had to go pee. And I wobbled my way over there, right? And I remember I looked, and they say when you're on the medicine, you shouldn't look at yourself in the mirror.
Yeah.
Right? And I did. And I was like, I was there and I looked at myself in the mirror and I remember I told myself the words, I see you for the first time. And I was like, man, that was powerful, because now I really felt this inner knowing of who I was and what I needed to do. So it was really cool. Yeah.
I wouldn't give up. My parents are plant medicine.
Yeah.
To gradually, my dad said, plant medicine. Never
Oh,
thought he
wow.
would. My mom's been a part of, I want to say that co-facilitating,
Hmm.
being there, but just introducing them to sound bowl and maybe meditation. You'd be surprised, especially if you can get them to come and hold space in a ceremony.
Yep.
And then as they watch the unraveling, you'd be surprised how it starts to pique their interest. And I would love to hear that story, because just hearing how he showed up for you and so forth, but just being that hard ass and still breaking that, and
Yeah.
just finally come into his, like, even though he
Just,
showed love, but
yeah.
just into his true inner self, and to just be like,
Yeah. Yeah. I'm always going to keep sharing my experiences with them. I have no problem. My 19-year-old son, 18-year-old at the time, sat with ayahuasca, and I shared with them how it helped him in so many ways. And my mom was like, wow, my dad was like, you're fucking crazy. Why are you giving drugs to your kid? But he just doesn't understand that part of it yet. I'll always continue to just share my stories. And I think the most valuable way that you can share this is by showing up and becoming better, that people wonder, what are you doing? Because if you start smoking crack, right, you're going to go down a horrible path, and people are going to see, like, I don't want to do that. And if you do something that's so healing and empowering and it helps you improve your life in so many ways, then people are like, wait, what are you doing? How? And then that's how I think, by leading by example, is how we bring more people to this awareness and this awakening.
wow. And
Yeah.
my dogs have sat with plant medicine, and it's
Yeah.
really helped them at certain points in their life. So definitely want to dive into that a little bit further.
With my
But
son?
yes,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
first let me ask you. So you grew up in this loving household
Yeah.
with the traditional balance and norms.
Yep.
Mom took the more passive role, father took the more dominant role.
Yep.
But yet your dad showed you love. He instilled values and ethics.
Yep.
Which a lot of children don't have growing up.
Correct.
So now you're going into high school. You're working for your dad, for the family business.
Yep.
And then, how old are you when you have your first son? And then, how did you show up? Because now you're coming from a very different type of household.
Yeah.
You're very blessed. And how do you show up for your kids?
So, like always, we repeat certain patterns. It's really interesting because even though my dad and I are very different in the way we see certain things in life, our character is very close, very similar, and we're both very stubborn and very stuck in our ways. So growing up, when I worked with him as I got a little bit older, there was a lot of frustration in terms of how I wanted to do things and how he wanted me to do things, and he wanted me to just kind of be there and be a part of the family business no matter what, and I wanted very much to go my own way. So I did, and I ended up just parting ways. I remember when a few of the biggest things that I've done in my life have been going against my dad's will. And he always tells me I'm an idiot and how that's a huge mistake and da 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 da. And yet, when I prove him wrong, then he's at least good enough to say, "Well, prove me wrong." And pinche Paco, yeah, he calls me Paco. And it's like pinche Paco siempre. Da, 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 da. Like he does it in a way that he's like proud. He's like he doesn't hold a grudge that I proved him wrong. On the contrary, he's like, no, que chingon. Like good that you proved me wrong. Like, I'm proud of you for proving me wrong. I was wrong. You were right. And it's been like that for many occasions. There's a lot of examples that I could share with you for that. But I went on my own way. I started selling cars, making really good money at a very young age, right, 19 or whatever. Ended up buying my first house when I was 20. Got married at 20, 21. Right as soon as I turned 21, I was getting married. Had kids at 23, just 2 years after getting married. The goal was to wait 5 years, but we were like, no, I think we're good. Let's do it, and got out of the way. It was her that wanted the kids. Really weird, actually. Growing up, I was never a guy that thought about having kids. I know my brother, who's 10 years older than I am, was always big into little kids, and I could tell that he was going to be a good father and very involved and things like that, right? Because he was always more like that, like more lovey-dovey. Me, I was more, they say in Spanish, huraño. I don't know how you say it in English. More like a little bit more
Stand over.
distance and not very huggy, But it was really weird because my wife at the time, she said, "You know what? I want to have kids." And I said, "Okay, like fuck it." I've always kind of done things in my life without really thinking too much about it. Like, okay, like fuck it, let's do it. And I didn't know what that involved. I didn't know what that meant in any way. I always tell people, man, there's no possible way you can ever be ready to be a father or a mother. Like, there's just no way. You can read 10 million books and get advice from therapists and you never know. It's impossible to be ready for it because the kids are going to be so different and the life things that happen. You're just never going to be ready. But in this particular case, it was the most beautiful thing that ever happened to me. I realized that it was truly my most important part of who I am as a human being was to be a father. Even though it's not something that I thought of at all before I became one. Even when she was pregnant, I said, okay, this is important. And I went to every single one of the ultrasound appointments, every single doctor's appointment. I never missed one. I don't think I missed one with any one of my kids. We always make sure to time it around my work schedule so that I could be there, be supportive, all that stuff. But when my first son was going to be born, we went to the doctor. They induced the labor because her blood pressure was rising, all this stuff. Ended up becoming an emergency C-section 24 hours later. One of those really tough first child births. And I remember I was in the operating room behind the little curtain. They were operating over there. I could smell the burning flesh from the freaking soldering thing that they use. And then all of a sudden I hear the baby crying and I'm peeking over and I'm seeing my kid and they bring him over. And I've shared this story because it's such a powerful moment in my life. They give me my kid and I swear, man, they just put this baby here. I didn't carry babies before. Like it wasn't my thing. I didn't even know how to hold this thing. And they put him here and I'm looking at him and I swear to you, there was a soul connection immediately the moment I saw his eyes. Like our eyes connected in a way and he was not crying and he had this big eyes and he's just looking at me and I broke down. I couldn't stop crying for over an hour. Like just holding him like this overwhelming. And I'll tell people every single day until I die that was the moment I understood what love was. That was really the moment. And I felt in that moment, I said, my life no longer belongs to me. My life is now his. And I was like, fuck. Because I was kind of fucked. At that point, I'm like, damn, dude. It was a very beautiful moment. And after that, then I had my other kids and it was just the same feeling with all of them. My third one, when he was born, the doctors had told us that there might be something wrong with him. They do these ultrasounds and they're like, oh, well, his legs are a little short and this and that. And he's got a single umbilical artery. And that could be a sign that he may have Down syndrome or some other syndrome. Let's do all these tests. And we didn't want to do any tests. We're like, whatever God brings us, we're going to be okay with. But obviously when he was born, I'm like, shit, he's cool. Everything's okay. Oof, like there was a beautiful moment of relief and seeing him, and he's the most freaking perfect baby ever, man. That kid is amazing. And we always joke around. It's like, yeah, there's a Down syndrome kid. The kid's got a 4.4 GPA and amazing athlete, does everything. Like he's just a crazy, amazing kid. So it was just really neat. going through that experience. And then after that, it just became like, okay, like this is me. Like I gotta be dad. And my life since then has always just revolved around that.
You know,
Just
that's a powerful message that you just shared about when you looked into your son's eyes and you said, life no longer belongs to me, it
yeah,
belongs to you. That, Lauren, if you're listening, we need to turn that into a PDF because that's a powerful message that
yeah,
we need to tell that story and how true fatherhood is now. Um, yeah, it's almost like you're sacrificing.
yeah,
You're giving up a part of you to
yeah,
now build. Yeah,
yeah.
so that's
To
that's
to
powerful.
build that other little human.
Yes.
Yeah,
Wow. Thank you for that.
yeah.
Let me
No.
ask you. So now you have your first son, and then you're married. How was your wife's upbringing? And you don't have to go too much in detail, but
Yeah.
how did that show up with parenting? Because you coming from a very loving household, did your wife also come from a very loving household, or was it different?
It was actually very different. Yeah, it was actually very different. There was quite a bit of brokenness in that home, and yeah, I'm not gonna go very deep into
No,
that just because of
yeah, it's
it's
her
her own
journey.
journey.
Yes.
However, there was definitely a different dynamic, except in the part that she was a great mother. She was in tune very, very much with I don't want to be that. And because we were together so young, uh, she had, I think, seen a lot. She would tell I think she would be okay with me sharing this, but she would tell me like, man, it's like when I saw your parents and the way they were and the way they were happy and the way there's like, I was like, fuck, what the hell is this? Like this is completely different. Now, in the moment, in the beginning, it was always like this very conscious effort to try to bring that loving home together. And for the most part, we did. I think that both her and I have made tremendous mistakes in both our relationship and through life and stuff like that. But if we did one thing right, is that we both gave our children lots and lots of love. And we have always made a very conscious, strong effort to be there for them, even through the breakups and the issues or whatever.
Now, what
Um,
does that mean? When you say you gave your children lots and lots of love, because on the surface,
yeah,
I get it, but can you dive a little bit deeper into
sure.
what is that? What does that look like when you say we gave our children lots and lots of love? Can you give us an example?
I think the biggest way to give love to your children is to be there present, to actually just be there, to have the presence of them knowing without a shadow of a doubt that mom and dad are there, that they are present, that they are available, that they can talk to you, that they can bring their issues to you. We were always very open with them in terms of letting them speak their mind and share. Never judge them, never punish them for them coming forward with something that they had done wrong. We would let them assign themselves their own punishments and grounding whenever they,
Really?
yeah,
Okay, dive deeper
yeah,
into that
yeah,
because
yeah,
that's
yeah.
different.
So whenever they would mess up, like they'd get into a fight with their brother or something like that, I'd be like, hey, do you understand that you hurt your brother? You did this. You shouldn't have done that. It's like, yeah, I shouldn't have done that. Okay, so, you know, every action has consequences. What do you think you should pay as a consequence for hurting your brother, other than the obvious going and apologizing and meaning it and learning from it and never doing it again? The crazy thing about it is that their punishments were always way worse than whatever we would have given them. But they would hold themselves to it. Like we would tell them, whatever you say, we're gonna enforce. So I remember very much one time, my middle one, he said, I don't remember what exactly. I don't even remember what he did, but I remember he said, no video games or no TV for 30 days. So I was like, are you sure? And he's like, yeah, I deserve that. I said, okay. He went through the 30 days. He was so little, man. He's my middle one, he will out debate anybody. He's a very smart kid. But he's also very good at understanding his consequences and stuff.
Wow,
So
we need to
yeah.
give this a name. So, what would you call this? Because this is a beautiful
Man,
PDF right here.
like a
What's the title of this?
of
Because
assigning your own punishment. Man, I don't know
yes.
what we could call it. I'm gonna have to think about that to
Okay.
give it
So
like to think of a name. Maybe the audience can give us some ideas.
yes. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, definitely. That's one of the things. And then you mentioned to me at the beginning that you wanted to put something together for people to have kind of like this list of things that tools available, right?
Yes.
And I want to take this opportunity to share one that I think was extremely valuable for me with my kids, and especially when you have multiple children. Uh, you give them each a day a month for themselves, like a day in which they get to be the boss, a day in which you focus all of your attention, regardless of anything going on, with one of them exclusively. So what I would do is like once a month, I would take one of them to Disneyland, just him and me, and we would go to Disneyland or to SeaWorld or a park, whatever. But it was one day in which we would just hang out, and they got to choose what they were going to eat, and they got to choose what rides we were going to get on. And that way it didn't involve like, oh, but my brother wants to do this other thing. Oh, my brother wants to do this other thing or wants to eat this other thing. And it gave us an opportunity to bond more closely knit. As when they're little, it's easier. As they've gotten older, now it's become, more difficult because they kind of have their own things going on or whatever. But definitely taking the time very specifically to say, hey, I am going to consciously put on the calendar one day per month where the day is 100% yours, where you and I are just going to bond. I'm going to hear you. I'm going to listen attentively. We're going to be the best freaking friends we can be on that day. And that just enforces the friendship throughout every other day. I think that's a really cool thing to do.
I love that. Definitely gonna create something from that.
Yeah.
I love that. I know something that I do. I started with my oldest daughter, and then now my youngest has joined. My middle one still hasn't yet, but once a year. It's only once a year, but we
Yeah.
go out to dinner. Nice dinner, and that's just time to really just share and just have that safe container to just something she looks forward to and
Yep.
gets dressed up and
Oh, nice.
just to go and just be in the moment and,
Yeah.
and it's her day and where do you want to go and just have those intimate conversations beyond the surface level, but really diving deep to just kind of what's really going on. But I love that.
Yeah.
I love that once a month. Definitely
Yeah.
a little bit harder to maneuver,
Yep.
but
Yeah,
it's
well, it
important.
depends. Like I said, it depends on their age, right?
Yeah.
Like when as they're older and they have their own life, it's difficult. I don't do it as often as I would like to. I get a chance to bond a lot with my youngest son because of soccer. Like we go to these soccer tournaments out of state, and we get to hang out for 5 days straight. Just him and I, and that's always really cool. But yeah, finding that time I think is very valuable.
Now,
Very,
how old
very
are your
valuable.
boys?
19 is my oldest. 19, 17, the middle one, and 16. He just turned 16 2 days ago.
Okay, so
Yeah.
let me ask you a question because
Yep.
I have adult children,
Mhm.
26, 20, and 19, or 21 and 19. And dealing with the dynamics of now their sibling squabbles and then
Yep.
trying to, matter of fact, I just got some this morning where my youngest and my middle were having a little bit of disagreement and then they wanted me to step in to intervene.
Yeah. Be the mediator.
And, yeah. And and every time I step in, shit turns on me
Yeah.
and I get the shit in the sticks. And it's like, I'm tired of,
Yeah.
playing referee. Like they
Yeah.
got to figure this shit out on their own. So
Yep.
it's trying to find that balance. When you step in your role as a father, and then when you say, hey, you guys got to work this out on your own.
Yeah.
And then you having boys, like I said, I never, was able to experience that. But how does that show up for you?
With my kiddos, they've gone through phases in which as one of them goes through like puberty and the other one's still a little kid, or the other one is already more of a teenager and the other one's still a kid, there's more of a separation, right? They've had their issues in which they kind of really don't like each other, but then for the most part they've outgrown it, and mostly I've just kind of let them do their own thing, understanding. And my thing is I always tell them, look, you love your brother? Yes. Just love your brother. That's kind of it. Just love your brother. Try to see their perspective and just love him. And I go tell the other one the same exact thing. Just love it. You know, you're there, man. Actually, just 2 days ago on my son's birthday, we were cutting the cake and we were just chit chatting or whatever, and we were like, man, how is it possible that they are so close in age, same parents, have lived pretty much the exact same life experiences, and they are so absolutely completely different, right? Completely different. The difference in personalities between all three of them will blow people's mind because they just really are different people, which I think allows them to not fight as much because they kind of do their own thing. They have different things that they like, and then the things that they do enjoy that are the funny thing is that they all like history. They all like to talk about uh like history and geography and the Bible. Like they'll debate about stuff like that and they'll go back and forth. I think it has to do mostly because the middle one, like I said, is just very, very, very smart. The two other ones say that he's they're like, no, he's not smart, he's autistic. There's something wrong with him, you know. And then I'm like, no, don't tell that to your brother. Like, no, it's like, and then he'll be like, Dad, actually, I did the test online, and I think I'm on the spectrum. I'm like, okay, dude. Well, you're high functioning. He's like, yeah, I'm high functioning.
Oh my God.
But they just have a cool dynamic. Frankly, I think it's one of those things that you're right. I think you have to just kind of let them be, and let them resolve their own things, and just telling them like, hey, just love them. Just show up with love. Kind of the same advice that I would give anybody whenever they're going through a life challenge. Like, hey, look, go into that conversation, that argument, that disagreement, go in it with love. And then that's going to help. That'll help you communicate better, and that'll help the outcome. Yeah.
I'm going to pose a challenge to you.
Sure.
This
down.
year, take your boys on a trip out of the country to some place where history has been created. Egypt.
Oh my
well,
God, that's
somewhere.
so weird.
Take them somewhere and build those memories and look back on it 10, 20. Like
Yeah.
it literally, a download just came. Like, I see you guys in another country
Damn.
just building some powerful memories.
So that's interesting. We actually have a trip planned to Alaska, which is not outside the country, but we're going to go there as a vacation for my birthday. That's my goal. But I just got goosebumps because you said Egypt. And recently I was talking to a very spiritually connected person, and he told me we were doing this exercise, and he said, you have to go to Egypt. There is something there that's going to answer many of your questions. And I was like, that's weird. I've never really put much thought into it. But the fact that you just said, the first thing that you said is Egypt,
Yeah.
that's interesting. And yeah, I'm definitely going to do that. I take you up on that challenge.
Okay.
I accept the
By
challenge.
the end of the year.
By the end of the year.
Okay.
I accept the
They all
challenge.
have their passports?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. By the end of the
Awesome.
year. And Egypt should be the place, now that you brought it up.
I love that.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to
Yeah.
having you come back and recap.
And
that
what
journey.
happened? I'm very curious myself to see what could possibly come from there. But yeah, we're very much excited to share moments like that. Yeah. Yep.
Let me shift focuses
Yeah.
and maybe talk a little bit about, you're going through a separation right now.
Yep.
And how's that showing up in the relationship with you and your kid?
It's brought us a little bit closer, I think. I think the biggest factor in that is that it reminded me that my life is no longer my own, and that I have to show up for them. It's theirs. And they're still young. And at the beginning, my human ego self was like, a lot of people go through this. It's not a big deal. They'll be okay. And then when I started seeing little things that I saw does affect them, I said, shit, I better lay back. I better be more present. I better be a better example. I fucked up, man. I'll tell you what, I made horrible mistakes through this. Mainly, I allowed myself to go into a deep depression which pushed me away from being present, which made my business struggle, which caused my income to drop, which caused financial hardships that shouldn't have happened. And in all of that, it caused them uncertainty that shouldn't have been there. So I fucked up. I understand it, I see it, and now as I learn from it, I need to be better, right? But as far as showing up, I know that I need to just be more present than ever to make sure that they know that both mom and dad, even though they're separate, they're always there. That we're gonna show up and that we're gonna be able to provide them that sense of security which they grew up with, and that they're gonna be okay. That no matter what happens, that it's gonna be okay, and we're not, fucking around, basically. Yeah,
And that's where
yeah,
co-parenting is really going to become the most important component because,
yeah,
a lot of times during separation, we've seen this over and over again where there's a lot of hurt, there's a lot of resentment,
yep,
and that can, you see the back and forth. There's that, pointing fingers back and forth. And then now the kids are forced to take sides and just, it creates fucking chaos
yeah,
and a shit show. And then now you've seen this component and everything falls apart. And so just acknowledging the fact that you realize you need to be present. And even though they're now into their teens and so forth, yeah, you hit the nail. You hit
yeah,
the head on the nail is that you need to be present even more because even though you think like, oh, well, they're a little bit older and it's not, no, it impacts them.
yeah,
And the decisions that you make as a father, as the leader of this family, regardless of whether you're together
yep,
or not, are going to impact. Fuck everything else that's happened.
yep.
All of it. It's what happens now
From this moment forward. Yep,
is going to shape
yep,
how they show up.
yep. 100%. And in their relationships too. It's super important now that they understand, because I mean, and I was having this conversation with my oldest the other day, how tragic it is that a breakup like this, and whenever parents go their own separate ways, the children lose that, if not all of it, at least a big chunk of it, of their hopeless romanticism, right? The ability to dream that, oh, I'm going to meet the love of my life and it's going to be forever. Because fuck, it wasn't for my parents. Why would it be for me? That disillusion, I think, is really tough. I worry that my kids will have a tough time in choosing a partner because, they're going to be like a little bit more like distrusting, maybe, things like that. I don't know. I hope not. I hope that they meet this person that is going to just blow their minds and feel a beautiful connection, and they're going to go all in. I think in relationships, that's the way it works. It's not a 50-50, it's 100-100. Both people have to give 100%. And that involves a lot of trust and a lot of faith and a lot of understanding, So, yeah.
Now, how did entrepreneurship show up for you? Because you've been in real estate.
Yep.
And, same thing. I've been in real estate, pretty much all my girls' lives while
Yeah.
they were, and I know there was some challenges. There were some highs and lows because real estate, like I said, it's never guaranteed income.
Yeah.
And it's the pressure, behind so, and even now in this market's been tough.
People don't get it, man.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
how did you navigate, while your kids were growing up and with that pressure and still trying to be present? And then how do you do it now, even more so now that they're adults and they require more
Yep.
financially,
Yep.
in addition to more attention and love and so forth? How are you navigating through this?
I'm very blessed that my business has always been very loyal to me. I've always done pretty well. Even in last year, that was probably the worst year ever. Some way or another, I managed to pay everything, right? I managed to pay the freaking private schools and the and the college and the freaking housing, and one way or another, it all showed up. very exhausting because I wasn't in tune with myself and with my business. So I was like, for a long time, I kind of felt that I was a salmon just swimming against the current, just waiting for a grizzly to eat me. Um, but um, but all of a sudden, there's a shift, right? And we go through this in entrepreneurship in the business world. You have your ups and downs or whatever. I think the biggest factor in that is that when you're in the downs, don't business has never affected me emotionally in terms of when I'm in my down, like in the downward thing, man, I just push harder. It's never really hurt me emotionally. It's the personal stuff that has affected me that in turn affects the production. When the business kind of actually, when I've gone through the biggest challenges in the economy and stuff like that, I actually get excited about. I'm like, oh hell yeah, this is my moment to shine, Um, because everybody's like, I remember when COVID just started and everybody was like dreading it and thinking, oh, we're not essential, we can't work, we can't do this. I was like, let's double down on marketing. Let's freaking do like we can do this. I signed up for all kinds of different programs. Like we got to work harder, and we're gonna freaking. And it ended up being the best year I've ever had. Just because of that different mindset. But when it comes to the kids in entrepreneurship, I think it's just again just leading by example to show them like, hey, no matter what, you got to do. And going back to my kids are my best teachers. I kid you not. And this is something that I can't take credit for, and I don't think that their mom can take credit for. I think that they just kind of have it. I don't know what it is, man, but all three of my kids are very self-driven. I never, ever, ever, ever had to sit with them to push them to do homework. I never had to like push them to do like they just do their shit. They just handle business. And it's really, really cool to see. And actually, I think in my personal experience, and I think this is very personal experience, they have taught me more than I could have taught them about that. Because for me, it's actually very easy. My personality, it's very easy for me to be like, yeah, fuck this. Boom, I'm going on to the next. Like, because that's the way I was brought up. Even though I grew up in this very loving home, my dad was very volatile. I mean, by the time I got to ninth grade, I had been in 11 different schools. Like, we moved all the time. Different business venture. We went from Mexico City to Argentina to the US, back to Mexico City. Like, and I'm talking, I thought it was normal for people to move every year. When I got to high school, ninth grade, and I started talking to friends that like people, and they're like, oh no, we've been friends since elementary school. I'm like, huh? What the fuck do you mean? And they're like, oh yeah, oh, I've lived in the same house since I was born. What? How is that possible? Because to me, I thought it was normal to move every year. So that's why I think it's easy for me to let go of stuff and be like, whatever, move on to the next. And my kids have actually taught me how to be more consistent, and doing what you need to do. Because to me, it's always been easy for me to be like, it's not, I don't feel like it. Yeah.
Now, what about how plant medicine has showed up in your life and how it's impacted you, and then also how it's impacted your parenting style as a father?
I think that my parenting style hasn't really changed much. The only thing is that I've shared these experiences with them. Whereas before if I wouldn't have had these experiences, I would have been very opposed to them ever telling me about it, right? Now I'm like, hey, when my son was 18 and he said, I want to do this, I said, hell yeah, versus me being like, what, you crazy? But as far as that goes, I think it just made me see a whole other side of the world. It connected me so much with nature, even though I've always been like a dog lover, right? I've living in Argentina for a while when I was so little, My dad says that I was always happy because I was barefoot for 2 years of my life. He's like, you never wore any shoes. You were always just in the dirt. That's why you're happy. And so I feel like I, as a child, I was very connected with nature. As I went through life and all the challenges, I disconnected myself from it, and plant medicine brought me back in. And now, I remember one of my ceremonies. I saw myself helping heal the world, and not in terms of like physical or anything, but I saw green trees coming out of my back, like like a beautiful flowing water of river, kids playing, trees growing. And I was like, okay, I think that's my purpose, to just make money so that I can help the world heal. Um, and that's something that was very different. So now, like I'm with my kids, I'm like, oh, we got to go in nature. Let's go hug a tree. And they make fun of me for it, but not my oldest. My oldest is a tree hugger as well. But the other two are like, Dad. I'm like, dude, hug a tree. I'm telling you. But yeah, other than that, it hasn't really been very different in terms of my parenting style. Because I think it's always been very, very much guided by just love. So I think I don't, it couldn't have changed anything. It was just the same guidance. Like I said, it did open up my eyes to realize that they are my teachers. That's what it gave. The gift that it gave me was like, hey, um, focus on them and learn from them, because they are great. Man, kids are teachers. They're definitely here. We have soul contracts with everybody that comes into our life, some way or another. There's some sort of an agreement there in which they're meant to be in our life for a reason. What more powerful connection could there be than your children? They're literally a part of you, literally a part. So, it's just this beautiful connection that you have with. Yeah.
Your son was 18 years old.
Yeah.
And he wanted to sit with ayahuasca.
Yeah. Yeah.
Tell me about that moment, and then you could share a little bit of experience without,
Yeah.
exposing too much of his journey that he may not want to expose.
So yeah, absolutely. So he's a very empathetic human being. He feels everything, and frankly, he's been dealing with a health condition that is very much triggered by anxiety and stress, and it manifests itself in pain in the stomach, ulcers, things like that. And he's been dealing with it for a while, since he was about 15. There's been some things in his life, and there was like a lot of little things in his life that kind of accumulated, including our separation and including that moment, right? He worries a lot about finances and things like that he shouldn't, but he does. And that triggered more and more symptoms in him, physical symptoms. Started losing weight and things like that. So, took him to do some breath work. He liked it. He liked the experience. And that's when he said, you know what? I want to try ayahuasca. And I said, are you sure? And he said, yeah, I'm sure. I said, okay, it's not for the faint of heart. Just know that, don't do it just because I've talked about it or whatever. Do you really feel called to it? He's like, yeah. I'm ready to do it. I said, okay, cool. And he set the intention to heal this situation. I'll tell you, he had quite a bit of symptoms going into it. And after one weekend, just 2 days, and again, I'm not going to go into the details of it because it's his journey, but after just 2 ceremonies on one weekend, he healed 100%. All of his symptoms went away. And he was 100% symptom free for about 4 months. And unfortunately, the symptoms did come back afterwards, and he's still been dealing with it. And now we're looking at different courses and different things. We actually just talked about it 2 days ago. We're going back to the jungle. He wants to sit with the medicine again because it was so healing for him, and he understands that it's not, when it comes to healing something physical, oftentimes it can be done with one, like the example when I shared what happened with me, but with a condition that's an autoimmune condition that's pretty strong and everything. It requires quite a bit of work, but I am 100% a believer that you can heal the root cause of an autoimmune disease or cancer or something like that with plant medicine. You have to allow yourself to go deep and go through the process and really, really, really maybe multiple ceremonies, and with the right people, the right guidance in the right place, it can definitely be the what needs to be to heal. So right now we're working through it with a combination of some Western medicine to keep things at bay, while we figure out what his approach is going to be. But
You
yeah,
know, I would recommend having them sit with psilocybin.
that's
Psilocybin.
more gentle.
And also
Yeah.
because they're teachers, and I've sat in ceremony with some of our fellow brothers, from inner circle and just outside the tribe,
Mhm.
that have been able to heal from autoimmune diseases just with psilocybin. Because
Yep.
ayahuasca, it's a grandmother, it goes deep into the soul,
Mhm.
but with mushrooms or los niños, they're
Yep.
there to teach you lessons.
Yeah.
And so very different experience,
I agree.
and I watch people
And
literally heal
you've met people with autoimmune disease that have healed.
just
Yeah.
in psilocybin
Yeah.
ceremonies.
Yeah. Yeah.
Dozens and dozens of people. So
Yeah.
sometimes, so like I said, because he's already sat with ayahuasca, which is an even deeper soul connection,
Yeah.
I think going back and sitting with psilocybin, because it's a rewiring of the brain.
I agree.
It's, it's changing
Yeah.
that story. It allows you to create that story of whatever you want it to be. And a lot of it, autoimmune disease, is just stored energy.
100%.
So
It's just a manifestation of this in the body that really it shouldn't happen, and yeah, I agree 100%. I agree 100%. I think that's the right approach.
yeah, especially because if it went away for 4 months,
Yeah.
then he has the ability to release it forever.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
but it's just it's
And that's
falling
what
back into
and that's what
pattern.
I was sharing with him and with his grandparents, actually, because his grandparents were like, oh, because when it worked so well, I was like, see, I told you, look at this, he's symptom free 100% because of this, and they're like, but really, it's funny to me how sharing this on a platform like this and everything, I can only see and feel other people's judgments and thoughts of like, fucking crazy, but man, the reality of it, and this is a fact, is that on the way to the ceremony, we had to stop to go to the restroom a few times. After the ceremony, he went and ate birria tacos with hot sauce and cheese and was 100% symptom free.
Wow.
That's a fact. So you can't, and nothing else happened. He didn't get the shaman didn't come and give him a shot of something in the middle of the ceremony that he didn't know about. You know what I mean? Like, this healed, and it's such a healer. And just like you have met other people that have healed other things, I've met other people that have healed all kinds of things, depression and stuff. So I know that it's the right course of action. It's just he needs to be the one that's ready for it. His second ceremony, the first night of ceremony, was very blissful and very nice and very kind to him. So he was like, oh, and then the next night he took a little bit more. And it was rough, and he had a tough time letting go, and he got kind of stuck in it, and that's why he has a little bit of hesitation in going back, because it was a very, and like, Mother Aya, the grandmother, it's a lot of tough love. It can beat you up quite a bit if you need to, but you need to.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, it's the shaman that I sat with and everything, we have a thing that we say is like, the medicine is going to do what the medicine is going to do. And you need to just let it. Yeah.
And it's funny that you mentioned that about just being openly free to talk about, plant medicine and people's judgment and so forth. You just get to a point where it's funny how people can judge it when they never even sat.
Correct.
And it's like, once you've sat with plant medicine, it's like, oh my gosh, you want like, you're fucked up, you need to take it. You're fucked up, you need to. Like, I remember coming back and I had like a long list of like 100 people of, you all need to take it,
Yeah.
And I just had to set myself and I had to learn that, the way that I was going to help guide people was to just do actions,
Yeah.
speak louder than words, and just showing up in a different place and showing up with not that ego that people knew and that
Yeah.
self-destructing behavior. And it got people curious.
Yeah.
And now I'm open to sharing my story and just because what it's done and how it's impacted my life, my family's life,
Yep.
and how we're a family that's healing.
Yep.
And can think whatever the fuck they want. I really don't give a fuck, to be
Yeah.
honest with you. Like, this is what's working for us.
Yep.
And to each their own. But
Yep.
this has been our path to healing. And it's not perfect, like I said. Man,
Yeah.
I tell you, we're still dealing with some bumpy shit
Yeah,
with my
yeah.
girls and so
Well,
forth. but-
at the end of the day, we're all just humans, and we're gonna have our ups and downs, and we're gonna have our emotional issues, and we're gonna have the moments in which we doubt even ourselves and we doubt everything, right? But the reality of it is that I think it's an experience that everybody should at least experience it once, so that they can say, yes, it's for me, or not. But it definitely I don't push anybody to it. The first time I did a ceremony with psilocybin, I was so excited about what I felt, what I saw, what I learned. Man, I was telling everybody, man. And then I realized, like, that's not the right approach, right? They think I'm just freaking, I had this crazy trip and like I just saw what I wanted to see. And then I said, no, I'm just going to do this very much on my own. I'll share with close people that I know, that even though they might not understand it, they love me enough to say, okay, that's good that he's having this experience. Those are the people that I would share with openly. And then I think that as we go through life, like the universe just puts the right people in front of you that need that calling, and then all of a sudden you just share and they're like, oh, I've heard about this, or I want to try it. And then that's the little opening. And it's interesting because it's not something that like I said, when people tell me, want to do this, I'm like, why? I actually ask them, like, why do you want to do this? No, because of this, and because I feel like a lot of people are now hearing about it. It's very mainstream now. And I want to make sure that whoever I share this with and whoever I talk about, it understands and really sees it as the powerful medicine and the spiritual medicine that it is, rather than just like, oh, this cool thing that's in style, right? Because if you do it for the wrong reasons, it's not going to be bad for you. The medicine is going to do what the medicine is going to do. But your takeaways are probably not going to be such a gift. I think that's the way I see it. I think that people really need to have that calling and that ability and understanding, and more than anything, I think courage to truly let go in the moment. Because man, if you don't let go, you're in for a hard one.
Oh yeah.
No,
yeah. Absolutely. So as we start to wrap up, what's been a beautiful episode.
Thank you.
This came to my mind right now.
Mm-hmm.
So, because of a near-death experience I had a couple months ago, and kind of talking about it just kind of brought it back. So, you passed, and your children are there to speak about you. How do you want to be remembered?
I was thinking about this just the other day. That's interesting. I was thinking about this. I was walking by myself down this hall, and I was thinking, man, if I were to pass away right now, what would my children think of me? And I think they'd be so fucking proud. Honestly, I think they'd miss the fuck out of me. Good question. Because I want to always be there for them, and I think they know that I am. So I definitely think that they would miss Dad a lot. And I think they would remember me as somebody that truly, truly, damn, what a good question. Screw you. That truly tried his best to be a good dad. Damn. Uh, you know, years ago, um, I had a panic attack that landed me in the hospital. Uh, the question brought this to my mind. I remember I was just driving to see a client, and all of a sudden I felt what I had never experienced before, which was a panic attack. And I didn't know what the fuck it was. I just started feeling like my heart started racing, my hands started sweating. I was like, fuck. Like, am I having a heart attack or what? Like, what the hell is this? And I couldn't breathe. And lucky for me, literally, I had to make one turn and there was a hospital. So I just drove in and I parked wherever I found and I walked in and I'm like, I don't feel good. I think I don't know. My heart is racing. I feel really sick. And they brought me back in like this. They actually got really scared. I was hospitalized for 2 days because my heart actually was skipping beats in a weird way. So they did all the tests. They did the stress test. Next thing you know, cardiologist, everything, all the tests were like, bro, you could run a half marathon tomorrow, and you're totally okay. Like, your heart's fine and strong. It's just a panic attack. It's just anxiety. So I started working on through that or whatever. But um, a few days later, I had a phone call, a free coaching call with a Tony Robbins coach they were trying to convince me of signing up with their coaching. And took this coaching call and I shared what had happened through this. And the guy said, this coach, right? Somebody I'd never talked to before or anything. He says, why do you think you got to this point? And I said, I don't know, man. He's like, tell me about your life. What's going on in your life right now? And I said, well, my transaction coordinator had just quit. I had 5 escrows or 6 escrows open, and they were all kind of dwindling, having issues. You know how it is. I was having trouble with the wife. I was like, there was just all these things that were causing a bunch of little issues, but it was a lot, right? And he's like, well, what are the challenges that you're facing in business? And I said, well, I'm facing the challenge of like, I give him some examples. It's like, well, why do you have to do that? And I'm like, well, because I promised that I would. And I am a man that always keeps his word. I said, no matter what happens, I will always fulfill my promises to my clients and to my friends and to my people. I will do whatever it takes. And he's like, oh, that's interesting, he said. He said, imagine that your 3 kids. At that point, he had already asked me about my kids or whatever. Imagine your 3 boys. He had taken notes. And he's like, Francisco, Sebastian, and Andre are walking on this really beautiful grass lawn. And they're carrying with them like some flowers. And they're walking for a few more steps. And they approach a tomb. And that tomb says, here lies Francisco Lopez, who died too young because he always kept his word. I was like, fuck. And he's like, I'm not saying don't keep your word. I'm saying stop over promising. And it was a valuable lesson because he's right. I was like, fuck, you don't have to make all these promises, especially if you plan on keeping, right? So now whenever I share something, it's like, it just really put things into perspective. But it really, that moment got me thinking a lot about that. Like, how do you want to be remembered? Like, how do you want your kids to feel when you're gone? Because I will be gone eventually. And God, I pray to all the heavens and God and everything possible that it's definitely me before them. But I think they would have a really beautiful memory. I really think so. I think that they'll also think that I'm a little bit fucking crazy. You know, they'll probably be like, man, my fucking dad was fucking wild, did some stupid shit in his life. But he always loved us. I think they know very, very much that I adore them.
Thank you for that beautiful
Yep.
thought. As we start to
That's the
wrap
first time I ever cry in a freaking podcast.
up. That's okay. It just shows you're
Yeah.
connected.
Yeah.
You know,
Yep.
and how connected you are with your kid.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. What are your closing thoughts as we start to bring this to a close? And there's been so many powerful messages and lessons here, and definitely things that we want to take back and create, different things to be able to offer fathers that are struggling, and even mothers that are struggling with, fathers that aren't being present.
Oh man.
Yeah.
So I came to the realization through a ceremony, through a mushroom ceremony, that I want to help figure out a way to fund plant medicine ceremonies for single mothers and for mothers that have been victims of domestic violence and sexual abuse and things like that. I think that's really, really important. Like I said, it came to me through these ceremonies. So that's something that we can possibly align ourselves with down the road, partner up and do some good things. But as far as closing thoughts, number one is keep faith and understand that no matter what it is that you've done in the past or you've gone through in the past or that you are currently experiencing or going through, all it takes is a small, tiny decision to, from this moment forward, approach everything with love in your heart. To just say, okay, what would the most loving version of me do in this case? If I can just offer nothing but love to this other person or to my children, how would I manage the situation? And I think that if you allow yourself to let love be your number one guide, everything is going to work out. Everything is going to work out. Just let love be your guide.
That's beautiful and powerful. And I just want to piggyback on your last thought. We launched Fatherhood Voices to help to break the toxic cycle.
Yeah.
We just launched Motherhood Voices a couple months ago, where different mothers will be guests, and it'll be a new podcast to share the stories of mothers and their struggles.
Love it.
And then we launched Childhood Voices, so the children can have a voice. So
that's really cool.
Kind of manifested into this whole at the end about healing the family component.
Yeah.
And so we just got our documentation for Fatherhood Voices Foundation, and one of the things that we are going to start doing is putting the board together, but we are going to fund fishing trips.
Oh, I love that.
For fathers and their kids.
Yeah.
And we're going to find a place where there's no cell phone service.
Yeah.
And you're going to go out there and you're going to spend the day, and we're going to give some cards or we're going to help create the conversation, because a lot of fathers don't know how to have a conversation with their kids, where they're going to just spend the day fishing. They're going to have that one-on-one time with their children and going to be able to have those, not just surface conversations, beyond the surface, and really get to know their kids. So that's going to be our way of starting to help create that bond with fathers and their children.
I love that. Count me in. Count me in 100%. Yeah.
So
Count
we're
me
open
in.
to different ideas. I think it can be, but we think fishing is one of those components where you have no choice but to either going to stare at each other for 4 or 5 hours, or be forced to engage in conversation, which as fathers, a lot of us don't know how to talk to their kids.
Yep.
So you just reminded me of that.
Count me in 100%. Anything I can do to support that cause. And like I said, the helping people heal through those horrible traumatic experiences. I was very blessed that I never experienced that. But unfortunately, life has put me on the path of being very close to so many people that it's very present in my consciousness, and I feel that the reason why it has been so present in my immediate surrounding and in my plant medicine ceremonies is because I have that possibility and ability to help by giving that love that we talked about that came from my mom, and that strength that came from my father, to give it to others, because that's ultimately the two things you need to be able to get out of anything. Just guide yourself with love and go into it with courage.
I honestly think, my journey with plant medicine started February of 2020, right before the pandemic. And I can honestly say that without plant medicine showing up in my life, I don't think I would have ever gotten it. I mean, no
Yeah.
matter how smart I thought I was, how educated,
Successful,
how much,
money you're making.
successful,
Yeah.
how much I consumed, like,
Yeah.
about,
Books.
books, motivation. I just could never make that connection. And then
Yeah.
plant medicine it burst my heart open and just got me to connect. And, with this platform for those stubborn, narcissist, piece of shit dads, which I was one of them,
Yeah.
that's what we're going to do is plant medicine. So you talk about the women,
Yeah.
there's a whole,
Yeah.
kind of vision about, there's some that aren't, we'll be able to do breath work or coaching, but there's some that's like, take the fucking medicine. Like, you're fucking up your kids.
Yeah.
You need to take it. Go in, open your mouth.
Yeah. That's funny. Sometimes I feel like that with certain people. Like, dude, if I could just freaking grab a big jug of ayahuasca. That's hilarious. But yeah, count me in 100% on any of that. And I'll share with you, off the podcast, a few of the things that I'm planning on putting together. But basically, that's the case. Like, put together a space, a container where people can journey and pay, and use the proceeds from that to offer scholarships for people that can't. I mean, can you imagine how wonderful it would be to be able to tell somebody that has been abused, that has been hurt for so many years, and say, hey, you know what? We're going to send you to Costa Rica for 10 days. We're going to pay for your flight. You're going to stay in this beautiful place. You're going to journey with the medicine. They're going to treat you like a queen that you've never been, and then having that ability to experience that, I think would just heal so many people. So, and then turn that love is going to be transferred over to their children, and it just, I know it's coming.
So I'm going to offer you another challenge, something that came through my plant medicine ceremony, and then something me and my daughter have talked about when we were in New York a couple of months ago. I created this whole concept where I built these communities, properties, and then rented the rooms and so forth, and almost created like a community where people just need housing, and just some are divorced, they're trying to get back on their feet, they don't have good credit. So accidentally created this community of housing with just multiple people from different backgrounds. So one of the things that came in ceremony was buying a property, and well, the goal is multiple properties, but buying a property and just open up the room to only single moms.
Yep.
Single moms that are, and allow their kids in there, and make it affordable to just cover the bills, expenses, but a safe space where moms and their kids can come and know they have a nice place to live and have safety and community to be able with other moms as they go through whatever struggles they're going through. And then, like I said, we're in this business where we come across opportunities, and it's just finding the right house that you can cut up and turn it into something that
6-7 bedrooms.
And almost like a hostel, but just a beautiful place where they can come, and as they're in transition, and it can be done where it's not necessarily for profit, but enough where it's gonna pay the expenses to allow to replicate that model. And that's something we're working out. So
I love
happy
it.
to share that.
100%.
And actually any input you can offer, because you're on that same trajectory. I think there's an opportunity to create something beautiful and give them that safe space and affordable.
Yes.
As they're trying to
I think
figure out what's the next
I think that's beautiful. Yeah, 100%. You can count me in on that as well.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Well, with that, wow, a powerful episode of Fatherhood Voices, where we're looking to break the toxic cycle. And with that, it's a wrap.